All right. Hello, everyone. So this is a first. I thought that maybe instead of trying to write out another big long email, that creating a video would be preferable for a few reasons. Number one, being that as I've mentioned previously, like there's a lot of moving parts to the course. Been getting lots and lots of questions, needs of clarification, things like that that are very justifiable. And rather than trying to address this in another long, belabored message addressing all these esoteric and very dry logistical issues and trying to slog through that and read it, it might be just a little bit easier to do it this way. And secondly, that for every face to face in class course I've ever taught, those students are forced to look at this a lot, and it seems only fair that you have to deal with that at least to a small degree as well. So you're welcome. Um, so this isn't going to be totally comprehensive, but at least some of the big issues to try and explain and try and answer some questions and to kind of plot a course a little bit too, in a way that hopefully is going to make a lot more sense than just reading through the myriad instructions around the way. So I've listed out these top few. We'll be in touch. There'll be more to come. The first one that I really wanted to address, which is probably the biggest one, which is here in week two, as we're going in, you'll see that there's a sort of part one and a part two assignment associated with an article. The first part being that you do essentially a summary yourself, and then a part two where you're to be assigned into small groups, and then within those groups taking sections of those to do write ups in a shared document. Here's here's my proposal. Here's what I'm planning insofar as that goes. Um, to be perfectly honest, group work makes my skin crawl. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I didn't like doing it, and I don't like forcing other people to do it. You're already going to be working somewhat together in these groups for the weekly topics, for the articles that we're now working on doing the assignments for and the presentations. I'll come on to all of that here in a moment. But this one is a separate one, it's an individual one. My thought on this, and I think it will probably be to everybody's liking, I do want to actually change the group component associated with this assignment. That is to say, you'll still have the initial article, you'll still do your part one individual write up associated with it. For part two, rather than putting you into groups, making you sort of collaborate and contact the other people, figure things out, shuffle it around, have to communicate it. You've got enough on your plate. I wouldn't want to have to do that. I don't think that you want to either. My proposal then is I'm going to strip the group work component from that. I'm going to go in, I'm actually going to create it as a discussion forum. I know we already have discussion forums, and I know that you're dealing with that. My thought being, if we can just collectively come together as a group and work on a discussion that addresses each of the sections, talk it through, answer questions, go through, clarify, talk about variables, all this kind of thing, it still hits all of the desired outcomes. It still gets us thinking critically and breaking these things down and assessing them. But it takes out the variable of having to deal with the logistical nightmare that is group work. Um, of course, this would, the expectation is that you're going to visit this discussion forum at least if, on a few occasions, and make contributions along the way. As I, get this up onto Canvas, I'll include instruction and that associated with it. But just to kind of give you a flavor right now, that's my plan, um, is just to create a group, which is namely all of us, rather than separate groups, and then we collectively will have the discussion on that. I'm thinking you're going to find that far preferable to doing the group thing, but I'm going to be asking for your feedback here in a little while, so you let me know. Having said that, so I mentioned adding this as a discussion. Obviously, we already have the other discussions that are going on. I've had a few questions about this, and I did just want to attempt to clarify a little bit about the article discussions. So, y'all are doing great, especially in week one. Week one is always a mess. It's crazy town. It's finding our feet. It's trying to get everything moving and do the right things. And you've done admirably. So that's been terrific. As far as the discussion for last week, ultimately what that was supposed to be, that should be moderated by myself, which again this week will be the case. I did not make much in the way of contributions to the discussion last week for a whole number of reasons, mostly being that between this course and other courses and a number of things, there was incredible amount of logistical stuff and fires to put out and all this sort of thing. I know, excuses. I'll do a much more thorough job of trying to moderate our discussion this week on the article that we're reading. But to come on to, I've had questions, of course, about the moderation of the discussions that are going to be associated with the articles that you've been assigned. And hopefully kind of seeing how we go through this week, next week, that sort of thing will start to give you a feel for what I mean by moderating the discussion. So the particular topic that you've been assigned, the dates and topics as you're working on them. Most all of you, I think, have gotten a hold of me now, letting me know which of the articles on the page you are hoping to do. The individuals for each week, this will be starting in week 4, so a couple weeks from now. Those articles associated with those topics, you each will have had your own article, and then the discussion, of course, is going to be a sort of overall discussion of the topic as it pertains to the readings that we're doing within those articles. And like last week, like this week, initial posts are kind of to be like, hey, pose a question, make an observation, what was confusing, or what did you want to know more about, or whatever interest there sort of is. And then as you make those initial posts, the role of the moderator for the discussion is not necessarily going to be that you have to go in, answer every question that every person poses, create a line for every comment that's made along the way. I mean, that's not viable. It's not realistic. But the logic being that as the discussion sort of moves, as the sort of overall conversation is taking place, themes associated with, well, what about these outcomes? What about, the implications of this? Wherever the interest in the conversation seems to be, to whatever degree the article, if the conversation is focused on the topic that comes from the article that you've been assigned, you're sort of the resident expert on that particular article. So the idea being that you'll be able to sort of speak to more about the article, more about the research, more about that one specifically, because you've spent more quality time with it, more in depth looking into it and the like. And of course, by that time, you'll have sort of put together your presentation associated with it, which is the next piece that I'm going to talk about here in a moment. So that's all that moderating the discussions is really meant to be about. You'll read about your topic. Hopefully you'll start to pull in additional information in that, because we're going to talk soon about how we're going to build towards the literature review for your topics, things like that. So hopefully you're starting to pull in some additional pieces. You're getting a good feel for not just the article that you're moderating and that you're addressing, but other relevant research, other things that are tangential to it that are related and relevant, that sort of thing. There's not right or wrong ways to moderate in terms of you don't have to know everything that by any stretch of the imagination. That's one of the most important things to understand is you can say, I don't know, or that's a really good question. I would have to look into it, or hey, can somebody else speak to this? Those are perfectly legitimate ways to go about it. You don't have to have like full authority on the topic. It truly is a discussion meant to be akin to what we would be doing if we were all sitting in a classroom and talking about these things, which someday, again, we may be able to do. The presentations themselves, I've had a few people asking about not just the content of the presentation, but specifically if you're looking on Canvas, the presentation outline, at least the initial outline, the skeletal piece of it, we're starting to work on this week and have coming up. So again, some of you will be going as soon as week 4, I think is what we're starting with cognitive biases. So those folks, of course, are going to have sort of their things put together sooner, more quickly than others going later on with other topics. That being said, even if you don't go until the very end of the term, you still ought to have your article figured out, have read it, and then this week be working through to, again, just get this sort of skeletal outline put together of what that presentation is going to look like. You're getting a feel, hopefully, for the sort of what it constitutes a presentation, putting together a PowerPoint, essentially walking through it, doing a voiceover. I'm doing this as a video thing because why not? There's no reason for you have to do that. You'll see the instructions. There's very detailed instructions about how you can go about doing it, but it's really just a matter of overdubbing your voice to the PowerPoint slides. That can be as ad lib or as like fully structured as you want it to be. If you need to write out every word that you're going to say prior to doing it, go nuts. If you're a little more free form like myself, that's perfectly all right too. If you do run into more questions about this, of course, please let me know. I'm happy to try and expand on it in any way that's useful for you all. What else was I going to say about that? I think that might have been it as far as that goes. This isn't nearly everything, but I think these were the big ones, or at least certainly the ones that most of you were touching on and wanting to know about. I'll probably just end this right now and move in to get into Canvas and start making some of the changes that I was talking about and get on some of your more specific emails and some of that. So just to kind of tie a bow on this, the big thing to take away from this is the first thing that I talked about, which is this group assignment for week 2. I'm changing it. Do not worry if you've not been assigned a group to work with. Right now, of course, your only concern should really be just the initial writing up that you're doing individually. And then as I can get this discussion forum put together where we will collectively come together as one group, it'll be worth the same number of points. And again, criteria for going through that is really just going to be, are the contributions that you're making to the discussion forum that we are all in, are they substantive? Are they addressing the questions and the analytical piece of the methodology, some of those aspects? And I will be fully deep down in that, making my contributions, responding, trying to kind of, steer the ship a little bit, which also, again, hopefully is going to kind of help to give you guys a better sense of what moderation looks like when it comes around time for you to deal with it. So at this stage, the last thing that I quickly wanted to do was, number one, like I say, I've never just thrown together a video like this and used it in place of a typical email. So number one, please, every single one of you, please send me an email, direct email to my email address. And all you need to do within it is just, number one, say, got it. That you've seen the video, that you know about the change to the group assignment piece. That way, if I'm not seeing that everybody got the message, I know that I need to contact individuals and let them know about it. And number two, just for my own damn curiosity and edification, let me know if you have a strong opinion about me doing the video in place of a written email. I have a feeling many of you will probably like it because it's way easier to just turn this on and listen to me ramble through it than it is to try and slog through paragraph after paragraph that I've written. But I also know it doesn't leave the same kind of paper trail the way that an email does, where you can go back and make easy reference to it, some of those kinds of things. So I'm curious if you have strong feelings on the issue, and be curious to get your feedback. So with that, and feeling extraordinarily awkward, I think I'm going to sign off. Please shoot me a confirmation email just to let me know. And of course, as always, if you have specific questions, if any of this isn't clear, which again is perfectly understandable, I'm still making my way through the weeds of a lot of it too. So just let me know and we will be in touch. And I hope that you're all doing really well wherever you are out there. And we'll talk soon. Cheers.